Welcome to Crime with My Coffee. This podcast contains graphic descriptions and adult content. Mature audiences only, please.
Hi, y'all, and welcome to Crime with My Coffee. I'm your fabulous hostess with the mostest, June.
And I'm Suzanne. We're going to tell you some stories you've heard.
Some you haven't.
And some you'll wish you hadn't.
All with a Texas twang.
All right. Well, welcome back, guys. Welcome back.
Yes, welcome. Glad you could join us. Sorry, I'm late to the show today. I'm late to work. I forgot my coffee.
Yeah. Well, we're actually glad you came back since we're doing a two-parter here, and it was a little rough, but I'm sorry, it doesn't get any better.
Little rough?
A little rough.
I had to go raid my liquor cabinet.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, me too. No, I get it. So, but what do you have in your mug?
Well, I knew we were doing part 2, so I came prepared. I have Folgers coffee in my cup with Bailey's Irish cream.
Well, there you go. That's awesome. That's all you need.
That's why I was late to the mic. I had to grab my coffee.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, I knew that we were doing this too, but I knew that I was going to be talking a lot. So I just made my breakfast blend coffee with French vanilla creamer because I know it's going to get cold and I'm going to have to heat it up. And I didn't want to waste good or new coffee on something that I was going to have to heat up that I couldn't enjoy. So that's what I have.
Oh, maybe you should have brought a shot of Goldschlagers with you. Do they even still make that? Actually, the answer to that is yes, they do. I saw it last time I went to the liquor store. Of course, that's been like a year ago. But they had it on the shelf. Yeah.
Nice. I was going to say no. I think they turned that into Fireball.
No, they actually do still make Goldschlager. Or at least they did a year ago. I saw it on the shelves at the liquor store.
Well, that's cool. I'm going to have to remember that next time I go to the liquor store, which happens about once or twice a year, maybe. I don't know.
Now, to be fair, I was at a big liquor store. I wasn't at a little one like right down the street from your house. I was at Specs.
Oh, okay.
So it was a big liquor store.
Okay. Big name.
Yeah.
Not Uncle Joe's right down the road.
No,
Gotcha.
No, not Uncle Joe's right down the road from you or me.
Yeah, right. Well, we're going to get back to the Dean Corll story.
You want to give us a summary up to this point? Oh, by the way, this is part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, you might want to go back and listen to part 1. She'll give us a quick 2 or 3 sentence overview just to kind of refresh our memories. But if you really want to follow along and know what the heck she's talking about, go back and listen to part 1.
Yeah. So we can just say Dean Corll convinced 2 teenagers. He's almost 30, right? But he's we're talking teenagers, 15, 16-year-olds. Convinced these 2 teenagers to kind of be his sidekicks on getting young boys to his apartment so he could have his way with them, and unfortunately ends up killing all of these children who were lured to his home by his accomplices or whomever he can talk into come into his place. Anyway.
And that's where we're at.
And that's where we're at. And this guy apparently moves when the rent's due because he moves quite often, I feel like. So last we left was in June of 1972, where someone was lured to his house, and one of the accomplices was trying to talk Corll into letting this guy go. And then the other accomplice ends up hitting that one, knocking him out. And, that's where we go. And this guy continues to help Corll because he's been groomed for a lot of years now, for several years. So now we're going to move on to July 19th, 1972. Corll ends up moving. He does end up moving again, but he went back to an apartment, and 17-year-old Stephen Sickman is leaving a party that he is at around midnight and ends up being abducted by Corll and his accomplices, Brooks and Henley. And he's end up beaten, strangled, and then he is buried at the boat shed that Corll had rented November the previous year. Then about a month later, this guy is not letting any grass grow at all. About a month later, on August 21st, 1972, 19-year-old Roy Bunton is going to his job, and then he's abducted. I couldn't find a lot on this guy right here, but I do know for whatever reason, he was shot 2 times in the head and then buried in the boat shed. Now, these two, the 17-year-old Stephen Sickman and the 19-year-old Roy Bunton, were not linked to Corll until 2011.
Holy shnikes, that's a long time.
Yes, but this is where they fit into chronological order, and that's why I mentioned them. But I did want to put that out there that these two were not linked to him until 2011. Now we're going to move on to October 3rd, 1972. 2 teens, Wally Simoneau and Richard Hembry, were walking. Brooks, driving his Corvette that was bought for him, enticed them to go back to Corll's apartment with him. And while they were there, Wally called his mom. And when she answered, and now this is kind of what she said. When she answered, he said, "Mama," and then the phone went dead. And that was it.
Because that won't make your mama heart freak the freak out.
No, I know. So she has, of course, no idea where her son and this other boy are, and we know their fate, just like the previous ones. They are sexually abused and strangled and then buried in the boat shed. Then on November 15th, 1972, 19-year-old Richard Kempner disappeared. We know his fate as well. He is strangled, he is sexually abused, and he's buried in the boat shed. They say,
Isn't this boat shed getting kind of full
I
at this
mean,
point?
you would think so. I don't know how big this boat shed is, but
I think it's big enough for a yacht.
I mean, it's pretty big, I think. Up to this point of November of 1972, there's basically what they're saying is between November and February of 1972 to November of 1972, there are 10 teens, 10 ages 13 to 19 that disappear and were murdered, and 5 of them were buried in the boat shed, and 5 of them were buried at the High Island Beach. January 20th, 1973, Corll ends up moving again to another apartment. That's
Jeez.
what I'm saying. It's like every 6-8 months whenever the lease is up instead of staying where he's at. And I would think with all this stuff that you have, because he has this torture board and everything else, wouldn't it just be easier to just renew your lease? Or maybe they don't want to renew his lease because, I don't know, maybe he's got too many people coming in and out all the time or something. Not real sure.
Or maybe he's doing it to kind of try and avoid police attention,
maybe, or figuring
detection,
out
kind of
like
making it hard to find him.
right, figuring out a central area that these people are disappearing from or something. I don't know, but he moves a lot. So
A
in
lot.
January, a lot. So in January, he ends up moving again, like I said, and just within a few weeks of him moving, 17-year-old Joseph Lyles is taken and killed. 3 months later, for whatever reason, Corll moved again. But when he moved this time, he moved to a place that his stepfather his father. It said his father, so I'm not sure if it was his father or his stepfather where they had lived before.
Okay.
So with all this moving around and all this, Henley's like, you know what? I'm going to move as well. He was thinking that he just wanted to distance himself, right, with all this that was going on. So he moves away. And then also, Corll ends up getting sick. He ends up suffering from hydrocele in early 1973. And hydrocele is like the accumulation of serous fluid, like your bodily fluids. It's most common in males. It rarely happens in females, but it's also called like elephantitis.
Gotcha.
Right. But the most common kind of this is an accumulation of fluids around the testicles. So it makes them swell, I'm just assuming that it's painful, I would think, but I don't know because I'm not
I
a guy.
would think,
first
but
of
yeah,
all.
like you, I don't have those parts.
Right,
So
right.
just an assumption on our side here.
Exactly. So it usually does go away on its own when your body absorbs the extra fluid eventually. Henley moves off, and then Corll ends up suffering from this. So between February 1st and June 4th of 1973, he's inactive. People don't go missing. People don't get killed. But when he gets better, I don't know if he was mad because he couldn't do anything or Henley had moved away or whatever, but Corll seems to increase in his killings and the brutality that he makes these people endure. Henley does end up moving back. He's like, well, I had it easier when I was down here. I had money coming in. So I'm going to move back. So Henley moves back. And then on June 4th, 1973, 15-year-old William Lawrence is taken. But instead of just a 1-day stay, per se, he's kept for like 3 days. While he's kept, unfortunately, this whole time he is raped and tortured and abused. And then he's end up strangled and killed. And then he's buried at Lake Sam Rayborn.
So
But
are we still in an apartment?
yes, he's still in an apartment.
Yeah. So how are the neighbors not calling the cops on all the noise coming from his apartment?
Well, I mean, we know he gags these kids.
I don't care.
I know.
You're still going to hear that. Apartment walls are thin as paper.
I know. I know.
My husband was staying in a room a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he could literally hear the guy in the next room to him breathing, not snoring, not breathing hard, just breathing. He could literally hear the breathing. I'm not saying these walls are that thin, but you can hear scuffling and you can hear that. I don't care if you're gagged, you can still be loud.
I know. I was just amazed that he moved into a house and then he wanted to move away from the house because I feel the house gives you a lot more privacy. And it seems like this guy needed some privacy
No,
with
he didn't
everything.
need it.
Well,
He
no, I mean,
needed to go to jail,
well,
but
I mean, that's true. That's absolutely true. Sure. But it seems like, but maybe it was more enticing for people and they didn't feel the need to worry as much because this guy lived in an apartment versus a house.
I don't care if I heard screaming coming from my neighbor's house and it was not, arguing and fighting screaming, like people do sometimes. If it was legit
Right.
terrified screaming, you best believe I'm calling the cops.
Yeah.
Even if it's just, their teenage daughter or whatever throwing a hissy fit because she lost her phone. I don't care. I'm still calling the cops. The cops are still going to knock on their door and be like, no, excuse me. Are you killing anybody in here? Because your neighbor seems to think you might be.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. I'm just saying he's living in an apartment. That's what he likes. Hopefully it's downstairs. Hopefully it's not upstairs. I don't know. I'm
Either
not
way,
real sure.
either way,
Either
I'm
way.
just saying, look out for things that are
Yes.
not right. And if you hear terrified screaming or especially if it's muffled terrified screaming,
Yes.
call the cops.
I agree.
Because
I
it's
agree.
not normal.
It didn't happen though. Didn't happen. Anyway, so unfortunately, this 15-year-old William Lawrence, after he is killed, they drive and take him to Lake Sam Rayburn, which is about 70 miles north of Beaumont, and it's 2.5 hours from Pasadena. It's not far, I believe I read, not far from Lufkin, but I'm not positive. I've always heard of Lake Sam Rayburn, but I don't think I've been there. I might have been there. I don't even know, but I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't get down to that side of Texas.
Yeah. Well, about 2 weeks later, 20-year-old Raymond Blackburn is abducted. He's also abused and strangled and then buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. July 6th, 1973, 15-year-old Homer Garcia told his mom he was staying the night with a friend, which is Henley, by the way. He is friends with Henley. Of course, Henley, I'm sure, is staying with Corll. And he ends up being shot and bled to death in the bathtub.
Yeah,
He
and the neighbors
also-
don't report gunshots
I know.
because
I
he's not
know.
the
It
only
is-
one that's been shot. I
don't
okay.
get it.
Okay, I don't know. Now, if I were in an apartment and I heard gunshots coming from like inside my complex, I would call the cops. But where I currently live, I have heard gunshots.
Right.
I haven't called the cops, but also where I live, we do get coyotes and there is a bobcat that lives at the end of my street.
Yeah. I
So
get it.
a lot of times I discount them as, depending on where they're coming from.
Right.
But if there's multiple, I'm going to call the cops regardless.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like I said, unfortunately, 15-year-old Homer Garcia is buried at Lake Sam Rayburn as well. And then July 12th, 6 days later, 17-year-old John Sellers is taken. And of course, he's bound, the whole torture board thing, tortured. And he also is shot. And then he's buried at High Island Beach. Now, it turns out July, David Brooks, who is Corll's accomplice, whom has been groomed for years by Corll, has a girlfriend. He's 18 at this time, right? He ends up getting married to his girlfriend. So he's like, you know what? I'm done. I want to move on. I want to start another life. I'm out. So now that Brooks decides that he's out, he's going to be with his girlfriend, now wife. It's just up to Corll and Henley. between July 19th and 25th, there are 3 young men who Henley and Corll end up taking. One is 15-year-old Michael Balk, who is the brother of Billy Balk, who was taken on June 26, 1972. So almost just little over a year later, this, a year earlier, this guy was taken, and now his brother is taken. He's on his way to get a haircut, and he's taken. Of course, put on the board, he's tortured, he's strangled, and he's buried at Lakes Sam Rayburn. And on July 25th, so the 19th, one guy was taken. Then on the 25th, there are 2 more young kids that are taken. I didn't find an age on them, but roughly you would think between 13 and 19 years old. Charles Cabell and Marty Jones, they were together. They were friends. They were taken together with, probably the premise of let's go party. We're going to have a great time. So they go and they end up being raped and tortured and strangled and ended up being buried at the boat shed by Henley. Corll didn't go this time for whatever reason, not real sure. Then Brooks decides, you know what? He's probably in need of some money. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to come back. So Brooks and Corll end up abducting a 13-year-old James Drymala, who was riding his bicycle, just having a grand old time. They ended up abducting him and taking him back to Corll's place, put on the torture board where he's raped and he's tortured and he's just abused and strangled, and then ended up burying him at the boat shed. On August 8th, 1973, 17-year-old Wayne Henley took a friend of his who was 20-year-old Timothy Cordell to Corll's house. Now, Corll is about 33 at this time. He's 33, and he's with this 17-year-old kid whom you can just imagine he's groomed over the years as well, even though it's only been a couple of 2. So Henley and his friend Timothy end up going to Corll's. They party for a little bit, and then they ended up having to leave for whatever reason. But Henley promised Corll that they both would come back. And Corll's like, okay. Well, they did come back a little bit later, but they had another friend with them. But nope, she's shaking her head, wobbling her head. But this friend was 15-year-old Rhonda Williams. They go back to Corll's place. They start partying again. Corll wasn't really involved in all this partying, He let them party.
That's
let
because
them
he's in his 30s. He's got to take that Advil and take a nap because he's sore. He's uncomfortable. He hurts. His knees are bad.
Yeah. So these 3 teens, they, do their partying and end up passing out. Henley ends up waking up and he's tied up and gagged. And he looks next to him, and his friend Timothy is naked, tied up. Henley's like, what is going on? He ends up getting Corll to take the gag out of his mouth. And he's pleading with Corll, and he's like, hey, don't do this. What are you doing?
You didn't seem to have a problem with it when he was doing it to Brooks, but you know what? Carry on. I'll shut my pie hole.
He's like, I don't get it. So Corll actually takes Henley to the kitchen, And he explained to him very briefly, probably very snottedly, if I had to guess. He said, "You know what?" He said, "You fucked everything up when you brought a girl here. So guess what? Now I'm going to kill all three of you." Henley's like, "You know what? No, 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 no. If you untie me, I promise I will help you. And and you don't have to do anything with the girl. I'll tend to that, but don't kill me. Are you kidding me? I've helped you all this time." Somehow or another, he convinces Corll to untie him and let him go. And he's like, "Okay." He said, "No problem." So Corll took Timothy and Rhonda to the torture board. And Corll told Henley, he said, "You can have the girl and I'll take the boy. Then we'll have some fun. And then we're going to kill them both." Henley's like, "Okay, but I mean, I really can't function in front of you. So can I take Rhonda to another room?" Corll's like, "Nope, you're going to have to do it here." He just ignored him. No matter how many times Henley asked him, Corll's just ignoring him. I don't know what happened. Henley ended up getting some balls because a gun that Corll had pointed at him in the kitchen just a few minutes earlier when he told him he's going to kill all three of them, Corll had this gun by him. Henley runs over and grabs this gun. Corll turns around, sees what's going on, and he starts like charging towards Henley. And he's like, "You know what? You ain't going to do nothing. Give me back the gun." He's going towards Henley. Henley freaks out and ends up shooting him. It didn't really penetrate. It did hit him in the head, but it didn't really penetrate anything. So Corll is
What kind of gun is it?
I maybe like a little 22 or something.
22 is what a lot of mobster hitmen professionals
Well,
use because,
maybe he
so is it a Nerf bullet gun?
I mean, maybe. I'm not real sure. Maybe it was just at the right angle or something. But
Okay.
it
Okay.
it
Carry
it
on. I'm
didn't kill
sorry.
him. Did not kill
Okay,
him.
so he shot with the Nerf gun.
It was shot with a Nerf gun, absolutely. Corll's still running towards him. Still not running, but still coming towards him. So Henley pulls the trigger some more and ends up shooting Corll 2 more times in the shoulder. Corll's like, "Oh, you know what? Yep, kind of felt that. So I'm going to skedaddle on out of here." He turns around and starts running out of the room. Henley fires this gun 3 more times. It apparently hit Corll because he ends up hitting the wall and just falling right there against the wall and ended up dying. Henley untied his friends and he's like, "You know what? We got to get out of here." And his friends are like, "No, we need to call the police. That's what we need to do." Henley's like, "Yeah, you know what? You're probably right." So on August 8th, 1973, at 8:24 in the morning, he calls the police. Police end up showing up. They talk to all 3 teens who are waiting outside for them on the ground nearby.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be inside if I know this guy's dead. I
Exactly.
don't want to be with a dead guy, and I don't want to be in the house where I almost died.
Yeah. So police show up. They're talking to these 3 teens, and Henley said, "Hey, I'm the one that called you. I'm the one that shot the gun, and
I'm
the
the one
gun."
that tricked these guys into coming here. I'm the one that
Exactly.
almost got them dead.
Yeah. So the police, he's like, "Hey, the gun's right there laying on the ground." None of these people were holding the gun. It was laying out there for the police to get. Police end up going inside, finding Corll inside, deceased. up against the wall where he had landed. Henley was like, you know what? It was self-defense because this guy was going to kill me. We were all going to die. I had to do this.
Because, see, there's these other 60 bodies that I can tell you where they're at that he did.
So the two people, Rhonda and Timothy, that were there, they actually backed up what he said. Yeah, we just woke up and we were all tied up and we were going to die. They were very believable because they were telling the truth. Henley was very believable because he was telling the truth.
3/4.
Well, I mean, for what he was telling them the truth. So he ends up telling the whole entire story to the police about helping get the kids for Corll, but he really originally believed that they were going to an organization and being sold as sex slaves. That's what he believed.
Either way.
I know. But he's like, you know what? But this is what happened. Then he turns around and he does tell them about the boat shed, Lake Sam Rayburn, and High Island Beach. And Henley's like, you know what? And I can show you where they're buried if you take me. And they're like, okay. Well, the boat shed, we don't really need you to help us with that because it's one area. But on the beach, we might need you to show us exactly where, this happened, where these bodies are buried. And at the lake, we might need precise areas. But the boat shed, I think we can handle on our own. And Henley's like, okay. So the search starts. And as soon as they found a body, they were like, holy shnikes. And it was very soon after they started this search. And most of these bodies were wrapped in plastic. Some were shot. Some of them still had the ligatures around their necks. They were all in various stages of decay. And in that first day, they found 8 bodies in the boat shed.
Oh my gosh.
So on August 9th, 1973, Henley gave the full statement to the police saying Brooks, my friend Brooks, also helped.
He's the one that dragged me into this.
I don't think he really knew that that's how that happened. You know what I mean? I mean,
you can put 2 and 2 together.
I mean, you would think, but I'm not real sure. But he did tell them that David Brooks had helped as well. So that afternoon, they went to Lake Sam Rayburn, and they were told by Henley that the last 4 victims are buried there. But 2 more were found. So a total of 6 of them were found. But it did turn out that Corll's family at one time had a cabin there by the lake. So that's why he was familiar with the lake. And he had a place that because there was a family cabin there. They go in, they look in this cabin, they find the torture board, they find shovels, they find handcuffs, they find rope, they find all this stuff. While they're searching all this stuff, over in the boat shed, 9 more bodies are found that day.
I'm serious. It's not a boat shed. It's a yacht shed. It's gotta be.
Gotta be.
A cruise ship shed.
Yes. So, Brooks comes in, talks to the police, because they go down and they're like, "Hey, you need to come answer some questions." And he's like, "Okay." So he goes down and he admitted to the police that yes, he had assisted in several of the killings and burials, and he can take them to High Island Beach and show them where this burial place is. On August 10th, 1973, this is just 2 days after Henley shot Corll, Henley goes to Lake Sam Rayburn and 2 more bodies are found. Then they go to High Island Beach where 2 more victims are found. On August 13th, 1973, both Brooks and Henley went to the beach again and 4 more victims are found. So this is the total of this is 27 known victims. So they actually considered this the worst killing spree in American history at the time. Henley insisted that there were more bodies at the boat shed and the beach. And like I said, a lot of these boys were considered runaways because they were 15, 16, 17 years old. So they thought they were runaways. By May of 1974, 21 of these victims were identified, and they had all lived or had close connections to Houston Heights. So Henley is indicted by the grand jury on just 3 counts of murder, and Brooks is indicted on 1 on August 14th. They're like, we're
Obviously,
done.
justice is blind.
Yes. So by the end of their investigation, they were done. They ended up indicting Henley for 6 counts of murder and indicted Brooks for 4 counts of murder.
Still, she must be blind because I'm pretty sure there
I
were a
know,
lot
you've
more
got
numbers than that.
27 people here. Are you kidding me? Now, Henley was not charged for the death of Corll, Dean Corll. They believed that it was self-defense, and so he wasn't charged in it.
Well, I can't deny that. Plus, it saves them
Nope.
dollars.
Yeah, that's what
Because I
thought
guarantee you,
was.
here in Texas, he'd have been sent to death row.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Now, Henley and Brooks are going to be tried separately. They try Elmer Henley first on July 1st, 1974. Henley's trial starts in San Antonio. He did not take the stand. By July 15th, and Henley is 18 at this time. 18. That's it.
It's just
On-
crazy.
I know. Closing arguments did happen on July 15th. His attorney called no witnesses, no experts, anything like that.
Well,
I mean, I know. The jury deliberated only 92 minutes, which is an hour and a half, and they ended up finding Henley guilty of all 6 murders that he was charged with. The judge sentenced him to 99 years each, which gave him 594 years to serve consecutively. And they sent him to Huntsville unit, the Walls unit in Huntsville, which is an hour and a half from Pasadena. And it opened in 1849, and it is the oldest state prison that we have here in Texas, the oldest Texas state prison. The capacity is just a little over 1,700 people, and they have the execution chamber for the state of Texas there. Henley appealed and was granted a retrial in December of 1978. July 18th, 1979, his retrial began in Corpus Christi, and it only lasted like 9 days, didn't take very long. He ended up having the same attorneys that he had previously. They didn't call any witnesses, any experts, just like before. The jury did deliberate for 2 hours, but once again, Henley was convicted of all 6 murders and sentenced to 6 concurrent 99 years.
Well, at least they were changed to concurrent is the only
As
thing he got out of that.
yeah, the only thing that he got out of that. So David Brooks went on trial February 27th, 1975, and he had been indicted for 4 murders, but at trial, they only charged him with 1. His trial only lasted a week. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes, an hour and a half, and Brooks was found guilty on March 4th, 1975, and sentenced to life in prison. He also filed an appeal, and it was dismissed, so he did not get a retrial. So Henley is now serving his sentence at the Mark Stiles unit, which is in Jefferson County near Beaumont. It opened in 1993. It serves as the University of Texas Medical Branch Hub. And from what I read, I believe that they have a lot of the HIV inmates and things like
So it's
that.
more of a
there.
medical unit.
Yes. So the capacity here is almost 3,000 inmates. Henley, on his parole, all his parole applications have been denied since 1980.
Good.
His next parole hearing is not
denied.
is not until October of 2025. He's now 68 years old.
I don't care.
No, I'm just saying. So Brooks served his sentence at the Terrell unit near Rocheron, Texas, which opened in 1983. The capacity is just almost 1,400 people. But due to complications from the Rona, he passed away May 28th, 2020, at the age of 65. So between 1970 and 1973, 42 boys vanished in the Houston area.
3 years. That's more than the months are there in that. The heckin' heck, man.
Yeah. So, but after the 27th body that they found in connection with Corll, where they were looking on August 13th, they didn't do any more searching. They're like, you know what? We're done.
That's horse hockey.
Even though Henley insisted that there were more bodies at the beach. He insisted there were still more bodies. But they're like, we got 27, we're done.
You need to find them all because they all had families and all of their families need these answers. They deserve these answers. They should have these answers because y'all classify them as runaways anyway because y'all are jerk faces.
Yep. I agree. So anyway, now this was known as the Houston mass murders. And I get it. And I understand why. And they gave the boys the group name of the Lost Boys, and they were all aged 13 to 20. There were 28 boys found. 27 have been identified. 1 has not. I can tell you that they did a recreation, of the skull and stuff, this is what he could possibly look like or whatever.
Right.
And they made a missing persons of that one. And it is, you can find it at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. But he's the only one that has not been identified of these 28 bodies that were found. 27 have been identified, which I think is really, really cool. So I can tell you that the New York Times actually labeled this as the largest multiple murder case in U.S. history. Serial killer wasn't phrased then, so that's why it was the multiple murders. So,
Right.
but before Corll, 2 years earlier, Juan Corona was connected with 25 victims. So he was the number one at that time until Corll came along a couple of years later. And now because there was 28 of them,
Even though there were more.
Yes, Henley insists there were more. But they quit looking. And 42 of them disappeared in that 3-year span right around there. 42. And they only found 28. But anyway, so until John Wayne Gacy, Corll was the most, notorious
Prolific.
murderer. Prolific. There you go. But he was the most notorious serial killer in Texas. So, and I was going to say, he had the most victims until John Wayne Gacy came with 33, I think is what they ended up finding with John Wayne Gacy. But I can tell you that I will never do that case because I could never do it the justice as I have heard from a podcast that I listen to. It's called Defense Diaries. And
we'll still cover it and we'll just be all like, hey, here's the gist of it. But you know what? Go listen to Defense Diaries because they are number one when it comes to this case. And they got it all, baby. They got it all.
Absolutely. You know why? I
do know why.
I just don't want to do it because there's no way I could even hold a candle or be in the same room with that because he has such insight. Let me just put it that way. He has such insight on that case.
Okay, we could go with that. I can buy into that.
That I don't feel if I heard that case from anybody else, it would be the same. And so I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it. But anyway, yeah, so that's my case. That's what I got for you.
Well, you know what? Piss off. That was rude because before part 1, you didn't even warn me.
Oh, I know it. I know. And it was a lot. It was a lot because
it was a lot. I think this is the first 2-part episode you've done.
No, I thought that I had done one.
Did you do
more
another
previously?
one? Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, they don't happen.
Oh yeah, you did.
Often.
It was the Atlanta child murders.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We don't do 2-parters very often, but this one with 28 victims, it's
known victims.
Known victims.
Proven,
even though Henley,
located victims.
Yes. Even though Henley insists there are more. So, but yeah, what a case. What a case.
Wow.
But I'm glad I'm over it. Glad it's done. I'm done.
Well, I appreciate air quotes there, you sharing this with me. I'm going to go dunk my head in a vat of tequila now.
Can I join you with that?
By the time you get here, it's probably gone. But go ahead, start driving. It's fine.
Okay. All right. We will. So
but we'll be back again next week with another new episode. Hopefully it won't be as bad as this one.
Hopefully not. And hopefully it won't take as long to get through it either. I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes.
But until then, you guys.
Yeah. Y'all take care. See you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.